Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So, last lesson, what we done was we discussed about saliba kulli juz'i, universal, affirmative, and then whether it's to do with universal or particular or affirmative or negative. However, it's very easy. All lions or animals or all human beings. We don't split like that, do we? So like if we have a conversation, listen to somebody's conversation. Nobody uses these are called categorical statements, where we're making where we're giving information regarding a statement as a whole category about all lions and all animals, all humans and all females, all men and all males and all husbands and all men. You get what I'm saying? We're doing all bid'ah and all sunnah, like we're discussing things generally. But we don't speak like this. We speak normal day-to-day activities, even Quran, the Hadith, in fiqh, in people's conversations, in court. How do we analyze? How do we? So the issue we have here now is to translate. It's a bit more detailed, but for now, very basically, how do we translate, or what do we need to look for in our propositions? So how do we get them workable? So before we go to arguments, how do we understand how propositions should be? Because every single statement should be able to, we should be able to categorize every single statement into an A, E, I, and O. But we never see anything like now the way we speak, do we? So how do we translate our normal day-to-day language into a proposition which can be understood? You follow? Okay. So this is what we can discuss. Translating to categorical propositions. Now, what we have to have, as I said before, remember we said the subject and the predicate, isn't it? So you have the subject and the predicate, and the copula and the quantifier. So we don't want adjectives. We don't want verbs. We basically want the subject and the predicate to be two nouns which are categories. Do you understand? Are you following me? So this, all oranges are sweet. We know the subject is what? It's a noun. It's a category, oranges. But sweet is an adjective. So to make this workable in our formula, what we do, so we have this adjective, we'll change it to say here, all the oranges are sweet things. It makes like no difference, but in terms of now we have two nouns. So now the subject is going to be distributed, because you can't have an adjective distributed and undistributed. You can have sweet things distributed and undistributed. So both things we need to have as noun. The subject and the predicate both needs to be noun. So when you have an adjective, what you'll do is basically add the word thing or fruit or something onto it to make it into a noun. You understand? So basically put an adjective, you put a noun onto it. It has to be something relevant. It's not. I mean, there might be more technical details as you study other books. But as a madkhal, an introduction, as a primer, this is enough for now. Similarly, what's this one? What's happening? What's the problem with this one? All Pakistan Muslims fast in Ramadan. What's fast? Verb is not going to be noun. So how do we do this? Any ideas? Yeah, fasters or people who fast. So all practicing Muslims are people who fast in Ramadan. Now you've got a noun and a noun. Now you can make it categorical. It's categorical, both are categories. Category of Muslims and category of people who fast in Ramadan. That's all you have to do basically. You got it? Then every Monday we fast. What do we have in here? Every Monday we fast. Fast is a verb, we got that ready. But every Monday is what? It's an adverb, isn't it? Maf'ul fi, time. So how? All Mondays.
All days.
Yeah, good. So all Mondays are days we fast. Now we have Mondays as a category of one thing, and days we fast is another one. So now we can work with this. You understand? But we got every Monday we fast, and what's that? How do you have the A or E or an I? So basically we need to make it. Basically like you're trying to process data into a sheet. So you can't have all these additional like. Is do it like this so that you know it becomes very clear is an A, an E, an I, or an O. So when we have every Monday we fast, like what's subject in there? Like you get confused in it. What's subject in there? What's the predicate? Is it an A, is it an I, an O, or an E? You get what I'm saying? So you need to do this just to make sure that we are able to then use these rules that we're going to learn in deduction properly. Are you following me? Makes sense? This is very important. If not, then it's like, okay, we don't split like this. How do we spell? We don't split it. We have to understand what the concept. So basically, take out all the emotion, take out all the adverb and the beautiful language. Basically, mantiq is the opposite of balagha. Like, take out everything and make it very simple. Like strip everything off and give me the details. Just two things. Either I want to, is it affirmative or negative, or juz'i or kulli, universal or particular. We get multiple of those and make multiple formulas and come down to one answer. But we don't want any additional language, just basics. You understand? Got it? Most Mondays we fast? Some. Why some? Most is... Remember in logic, if it's not all, everything is going to be what? Some. So even though it's most, you have to say some. Because most, even if it's 99, even if it's 99, let's say 99% of the time of Mondays we fast. Brilliant, but I can't be 100% sure. I can't make a judgment on kul, because not every, some. You get what I'm saying? So as long as it's not 100% or every, it's going to be some. So even most, majority, usually, all of these are still going to be what? All of these are going to be what? What are they going to be? Particulars, not universals. Good? Yes? Still okay? Yeah. Now, what if there is no, for example, in here we had most, we had some, every. What if we don't have anything at all? Like I just say men, or I just say women, or I just say boys, or I say girls, or I say Muslims, or I say Christians, or I say Jews, or I say Hindus, or I say burgers, or I say meat. You get what I'm saying? There's no quantifier on this. Huh? Burgers. Well, it depends on the context. It will depend on now. You have to determine what the speaker is saying. You following? Now this is where we get to our next discussion about definition and extension. Because sometimes when we have a statement and there's no quantifier on it, and it's a general, it's not like a name like John or Zaid or Bakr or Amr. What is it really? So when it's like something like in this example here, we have the word man. Now there's no some, there's no all. Do you understand? So we have to come to our own conclusion. Are you following? Now what we have to understand here, this is a bit of a side note. It comes in Arabic as well. You have obviously in Arabic you will have alif lam on this. Now you have to, in Arabic you have two things you have here. Alif lam for haqiqa, or you have alif lam for al-istighraq. Okay? Haqiqa means by definition. And istighraq means here extension. What does that mean? When we say by definition, we're not talking about every single individual. We're just talking about that species or that category generally. You following? And we say extension, we're saying, well, we're trying to be including every single person in this category. Every single member, every single orange, every single lion, every single bird, every single whatever it is. Are you following me? For example, somebody might say, for example, dogs are easier pets than cats, or opposite, cats are easier pets than dogs. Now, is it extension definition? Because you may have certain dogs that are much easier, certain cats are much easier, or much worse, whatever way you look at it. Are you following? So, see, so what happens is you have overgeneralization. So basically, you're being what do you call it, prejudiced, or it could be. I'm not saying it's not. They're not. But you have to understand here: is this sentence or this statement by definition or extension? So, for example, it's a proverb. What's a proverb? Al-insanu harisun fima muni'a. Now, a human being or man is keen to do what's prevented from. He said, "Don't do that. Don't look in that box." It's like, why not? I straight away want to look in that box. When I mentioned it the whole time, don't look behind the cupboard. You never look behind the cupboard. I said, don't look behind the cupboard. It's like, there must be something there. Maybe somebody said, okay. Somebody's not. Some person, some woman is not. Okay, don't look. I won't look. It doesn't bother them at all. So this is now by definition, generally man's nature is such. Man's nature is such that what? Whatever he's told not to do, he's more inclined to that thing. There's a curiosity that comes behind of him. Youth is a branch of madness, which means well, by shababu shu'batu min al-junun. So now what's happening here now? Not every single youth, some young men are very, very not mad. They're very, very mature. They're very, very understanding. They're not proud. They're not arrogant. they listen to the elders, they take advice on, they make sound decisions. But why is it youth? By how? By extension, by definition. By definition. I mean, generally speaking, this is the characteristic. This is the essence and the essence of youth. It creates this inside of you. Do you understand? So from this you can also understand, for example, this statement that for example, Allah says in the Quran, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa." Or unless the Arabs say, "Ar-rajulu aqwam min al-mar'a." It's not talking by extension. Because if by extension, what would that mean? That every single man is stronger than every single woman. That's not true. You get some of them will batter us. No? Nice big strong will beat us up. But by definition, meaning, generally speaking, if you look at the elite of each, like an example, running. The elite male runners are 10% faster than the elite female runners. The male world record is what, 9 point? How much is it? Saying about 9.4, 9.5, whatever it is. And the women about 10.8 or something like that. So a whole second and a bit more difference. Almost 10% difference. But those women who run 10.8 or even 11, even 12, they could beat us, like, they could run 200 meters by run 100 meters. Do you understand? So it doesn't mean that every single man is faster than every single woman. It just means by the makeup of this is different. And it happens in many things. For example, you say, for example, girls are more studious, or teenage girls are more studious than boys. It's just by general observation. It's not that every single girl is more studious or more neat, more organized, more tidy, more diligent than every single boy. Because you look at, but it's a general observation regarding how their makeup is, how their structure is, how they function. That's it. You get it? So you have to see here, when you have, are you talking about something by extension or by definition? If you talk about extension, that means that just one example, basically, if it's extension, it's a mujiba kulliya. That every single one. And if it's extension, it means here generally with some. And when we use it by definition, it means some but more. But obviously in mantiq, more and some is the same thing. This means a lot of, not all, but generally speaking. So when you see when there is no quantifier, then the burden falls upon the burden falls upon the person understanding this to see, well, what is it referring to? Is it referring to this item as by definition or by extension? Understood? Make sense? Yes? Okay. So recap. We have concepts or ideas that we have in our minds. How do we express and communicate our ideas? Using terms. And terms of something we understand, we use day-to-day activities, we don't need to keep on spelling it out. However, when we get technical now, we have technical issues, for example, like a hill and a mountain. We don't need to have most people don't know the difference between a hill and a mountain. They just have a general idea that mountain is big, hill is small. But when it comes to geography, you have to have a definition. If not, you will not be able to differentiate, classify things as a hill or mountain. So when it comes to something, so the term may be used commonly amongst everybody, but when it comes to very technical issues, then we need to have definitions to make sure we get the right conclusion, we know what we're talking about. And then we said within definitions, we have to have inclusive definitions, which allow everything to be, whichever should fall under that, comes under that. But at the same time, it needs to also be what? Exclusive. And inclusive means what? In Arabic? Jami'. And exclusive means what? Mani'. So it's jami', it includes everything, and mani' means it excludes those that shouldn't be in there. So your definition must have these things. It should have a circular definition. Because if you have a circular definition, you can't define a word using a word but I don't even know what it means. Do you understand? Then after that, we said you have essential definitions. So you will come across this in lots of books books which are use the Greek style, which is what you define something by its genus first, and then what makes that thing different from the other members of the genus by the differential, the genus and the fasl. Correct? Then after that, we're on to, we said when you have two terms, or you have two terms, or two universals, the link between those can be what? 4. Either tasawi means what? The exact same. Tabayun means completely different, nothing overlaps. And umum khusus mutlaq, one falls under the other. So for example, babies and humans, men and humans, women and humans. Yes? One falls under the other. And umum khusus min wajhin. So one of this falls under this category, it overlaps like this. So for example, tea and hot items. Some tea are hot, most tea is hot, but some get cold tea. And some hot items are tea. Yes? Fruits and food. Well, most foods are food, isn't it? Some can be harmful, some can be poisonous. You get the idea. Yes? So one of this overlaps a bit in here. That's called khusus min wajhin. Then we said here, whilst we're understanding these terms, we have to make sure that we don't make a few fallacies. When we understand the terms are very clear. One is, we don't equivocate one with the other. What can happen? We have one word, and it has what? Two meanings. Like bark on a tree or bark of a dog. Or we can have one idea, one concept, but we have two words for this. And we think we have it, but we think that, and these words are actually mutasawi. They refer to the same thing. Correct? Similarly, we also need to understand what? How it's being used. Is it being used what? Dalala, mutabaqa, mutabaqa, dalala bil, tadammun, dalala bil, iltizam. When you're using that word as a speaker referring to it as a whole, is he referring to it as a part, or is he referring to an extra, a characteristic of that? You understand? So in definition, we must make sure we don't make these mistakes. Equivocation, we understand how the speaker is using this word, and we don't make the fallacy division composition. Then when we said when we moved on to the next category was what? Next lesson was what? Propositions, statements. And a statement can either be true or false. Mantiq can't tell you whether it's true or false. Mantiq can help you maybe think clearly, but you have to find out the data. That I can't say, well, the spinny hill is a spinny mountain. The hill in Spinny Hill Park is a mountain. I said, I don't know. If it's a mountain, then it will have, if you tell me it's a hill or a mountain, you figure it out first. Then we can use that data to process it correctly. Yes, so true or false is to do real world data. Then that proposition can either be universal or it can be particular. Universal means what? It applies to every single member of that group or that category. And particular means what? It does not apply to every single member. Either majority of them, or some of them, or one of them. Anywhere between 0.1% to 99% is still what? Particular, it's not universal. Okay? And the affirmative and negative is very easy. And then distributed and undistributed. Distributed means what? That in that proposition, when we have a term, we come to know something about the entire term. And undistributed means we don't know something about the entire term. And when we had the A, E, I, O, we said what? In the A proposition, what's distributed? The subject. In the E proposition, what's distributed? Both subject and predicate. And the I, none. And the O, the predicate. So you go here, S, S, P, P. So and 0. We had that table we did before. And that's going to be important later on in the next few lessons. Is that clear to everybody? Yes? Then we said there's a mode. There's the mode of the proposition. Is the link between the subject and the predicate necessary, impossible, or contingent? Correct? Necessary means wajib, impossible means mustahil, and contingent means what? Mumkin. And the necessary, the impossible, and the contingent can be customary, meaning like what we accustomed to, not scientific, it's like what people are accustomed to. Yes? Yes? For example, it's 50 degrees Celsius. That's impossible. You don't get 50 degrees Celsius in England. Or it might be possible in 10 years' time, I don't know what happens. But you get what I'm trying to say. You get 40 today, you might get 50 next time. But customary is impossible, isn't it? Scientific is not impossible. Correct? And the physical or scientific is basically what? When we have what? Based on our experience, this thing does not happen. And metaphysical means is logically is either logical aspect. And we have to differentiate between the scientific necessary and a scientific impossible and a scientific contingent, as opposed to the metaphysical necessary, impossible, and contingent. Yes? And we said in there that when something is metaphysically impossible, then that question of Allah being able to do that is an invalid question. Explain that last lesson. And we also said that something being scientifically possible or impossible does not necessarily make it metaphysically impossible. And that's when miracles come under. So if something is scientifically impossible, for example, to stay underwater for 2 hours or 20 hours, it's not possible. Scientifically, you will drown. You understand? But we say this only happens because Allah wants it. It's scientifically necessary to die, or scientifically impossible to survive. But what do you say here? Metaphysically, it's what? Contingent. Allah can make somebody survive underwater. Allah can make somebody go in the fire. And we don't believe any and every story because we're not stupid. But we say what? If it comes from what? An authentic source, such as the Quran or authentic ahadith which have been proven without any doubt, then in there, whatever is there, there's no problem believing it because it's metaphysically impossible. So just as, for example, to build a bridge over like 20 kilometers was scientifically very hard to do before in it, like a long time ago. How would it even work? How can you even go to space? How can you have Wi-Fi? How can you have video calls? So the same way scientific things are, the impossible becomes possible. We say here, metaphysical things, as these things are what? The impossible may be impossible scientifically, but it's not impossible metaphysically. Therefore, Allah can do this. That's why anything you can imagine that is logically conceivable, as long as it's not metaphysically impossible, Allah can do this. That's why all the miracles fall in this category. Yes? And you should be very cautious trying to reinterpret miracles, etc., which are proven without any doubt, to try to please somebody, because what you're really doing is basically saying what? Allah is helpless. It has very severe connotations. And it seems very illogical. That's even more illogical because why? You're saying, well, Allah created the entire heavens and the earth. Yes, because I believe it comes in the Quran clearly. As a believer, Allah created everything, heavens and the earth and the samawat. So if you look at this massive, you've seen these NASA photos, massive galaxies, but yet He can't change the property of fire for one Ibrahim ever. It's impossible. So you have to reinterpret that. Do you understand? So it's like we're saying that He's so powerful, He created all of it, but He can't change the property of fire. Allah is so powerful, He created the entire ocean, all of its contents, but He can't have it such that one whale, that a whale can swallow Yunus and he not die. Or is, you get what I'm trying to say? So, even though scientifically it's impossible for a person to survive in the stomach of a whale for a very long period of time, so well, that's scientifically possible because you're basing your information on what? Empirical data. Data has been proven and established. And we say, well, we know that these things only happen, they're not necessary to happen. It happens because Allah caused it to happen. And wherever Allah wish, He can suspend these things from occurring. Yes? Understood? Everybody following? Abdurrahman, any questions? Billah? No? Yeah? Subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.